All right. Well, let's start with filling people in on what's happened in the last 7 months, because we did the first season where it was all about opening a brewery and really didn't talk anything at all about running a brewery. So what's happened in the last 7 months?
Fuckload. Heaps.
Tell me more.
Where do we start?
Well, we had to learn, I guess.
Well,
So we hadn't done it.
Yeah. So we opened in June. I think the last episode was in July. I wasn't here, but
We managed without you.
You managed without us. We made it through summer. I don't know So I guess what are the good things that happen and what are the not so good things?
The good things are we're still making beer. The doors are still open.
Yeah.
We're making money. Not heaps, but we're making money, which is a positive, I think, for 7 months in.
Yeah.
There's more of us. It was just three drunks sitting in a podcast room. Now it's
10 drunks.
10 drunks.
Yeah, the staff thing's been cool. Chris, our sales guy, is crushing it. We've got a cool group of people who help with the bar and the bottling. I think it's 10 total.
Yeah, I think there's 10 of us. I think we had a pretty wicked Christmas party.
True. That could have been a good podcast. We're stocking at a lot more venues too. I think we're around 100. I hadn't made the effort to count those for a while, but the last time I counted was about 50. So
Up to 100 now?
yeah.
All local on the Gold Coast or?
Gold Coast and Brizzy mainly.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of everyone we've either sold to within the last couple of months.
Yeah, these aren't regular. Not
Yeah.
regular.
Not weeklies, but
No.
in the loop.
Yeah. So I think that's good. I think like the last couple of since the start of summer, we're probably selling to twice as many places,
Oh, easy.
which is pretty cool. And the cellar door's going really well. Summer's been pretty huge. Getting consistent crowds in, more so probably Fridays and Saturdays, but people in every day. Tours are going well.
Takeaway's good.
Yeah. Yeah, growlers and squealers are going well. Lots of people coming in for growlers and squealers. Package, I think, could probably be better. That's probably one thing we need to improve.
Yeah, we knew the shortcomings
True.
on that going into it.
Yeah.
We
and
didn't
we've
even have forecast.
No.
It wasn't
True.
part of our plan to even be bottling at this point.
I think
Yeah.
we've made it work for us to a degree.
Yeah.
But part of that is now that we've also hit our capacity. 7 months in, we're filling tanks and emptying them just as quickly. So expansion time
Yeah.
is pretty exciting for 2017.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get more space, more tanks, and that'll make it easier for us to package more, easier to brew more, and less people coming in not finding the beer they want.
Hopefully more cellar door, floor space.
Yeah, that'd be cool too. It's pretty small at the moment. It's been good though. It'd be good to be able to do events and stuff too. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but
We're working on it.
We're
Yeah.
working on it.
all that's going to be good. The other cool thing is the neighbours have been really good, because I think when we were on this podcast last time, we were still, because we weren't open, we were still talking to the neighbours about what it was going to be like, and definitely not every single person was on board with it. But since then, I think they've pretty much all
I think
come
they
around.
saw we're not Carlton United and Melbourne's
Yeah.
all melded into one.
We told
Yeah.
them, 12 months ago that we wanted to be good neighbours, and I think, hearing that's not enough, and we've proved it over the last 7 months and done everything that we were supposed to do and kind of above and beyond to be a good neighbour.
It's a cool area too, and I think the Burley Social thing's sorted now, right? So they're
I don't know if it's been announced.
I don't know if it's official.
It's sort of just gone away.
they're still there. They're still there. It was like 3
I got
months
coffee
ago.
this morning.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I'm willing to go with that.
So hopefully it means that people are getting used to the idea of there being venues in the area. But yeah, there's been a couple of issues. The things I wrote down were there's been a couple of equipment things and a few process issues which kind of tie into the equipment things. Which will lead into our chat with you, Hendo. But let's talk about some of those things.
Yeah, sure. So, there is no such thing as a perfectly run brewery, and we knew, especially when we set up for the price that we paid for all of our equipment, that things were going to break down.
Yeah.
And we did have a couple of things fail on us. One of them was our glycol system. So we lost... The biggest loss was all our glycol. We lost about 3,000 litres of glycol.
The pump failed.
Yeah, so a seal on a pump failed. Just a very simple fix, like not a huge problem, but the cost involved in replacing
How much is
that.
glycol these days, a litre?
A lot.
Yeah.
So we were able to get it back up and running really quickly. But
We didn't lose any beer either.
No,
No.
that's the cool thing because we
Yeah.
just bought a bunch of ice.
I was
bags
buying tons of ice every day, filling our glycol tank with it and
Yeah.
using iced water to chill our tanks.
It would have actually been better for us had we lost beer because insurance would have come into it.
Yeah,
But
the
as it
beer was
was-
insured,
True.
the glycol wasn't.
Yeah. But don't worry, we've lost beer as well. We can talk about that.
Yeah. So we also had a solenoid fail on one of our tanks, which was right in the peak of fermentation, and it was unfortunate. And the temperature of the beer got up
And we were
well too
away.
high. We actually went away for the weekend, so it was
Yeah.
the first time we went away for 2 days. We went down to Newcastle for Warners at the Bay, and I was confident blindly that we could get away for a couple of days and everything would be sweet. But sure enough, the second you do that, something goes wrong, and no one
Yeah.
was here to check it. And had someone been here that day, we would have spotted it before it was too late.
Mm.
It
Unfortunately,
may not have made a difference though.
it
I
may
don't
not
know.
have, but it probably would have. And we came back on the Monday and the beer was cooked. So we had to dump an entire batch of beer.
Mm.
And the paperwork that goes with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
The
always
ATO.
fun. They love that.
Yeah, so it was part. I mean, it was equipment failure really, but also
Process failure as well.
yeah. If we had a process where every day someone does that job, we could have had someone here doing that job, even if it wasn't you. So that's I guess what we learnt. But
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and part of that, I've been running the entire brewery by myself for the
Yeah.
past 7 months, which is it's not sustainable, but it's gotten us here to where we are, and we've now got a young strapping lad who's learning some of the ropes
yeah,
to take a bit of the pressure off me.
sweet. Which probably leads us into the conversation with you, Hendo. Welcome.
Hi.
How you been?
Good. I'm here on the beautiful Gold Coast, and it's good to be here. And I'm really excited and looking forward to working with you guys over the next couple of months, more or less, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So you came to us the other week and you had something you're working on and had an idea for us. So why don't you fill us in?
Yeah, so I've sort of taken a bit of a back seat with Brewcult for a while. I mean, had a really big 2016, winning the champion Gypsy Brewer trophy at the AIBAs and gold medals at the CBA Awards, and then opened a bar in November, and it kind of left me feeling a little bit cooked, and lots of change happening within the business as well. And I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna head up this way. I'm originally from southeast Queensland. I grew up up on the northern end of the Gold Coast, and my family lives at the Granite Belt or Brisbane or up on the Sunshine Coast. So it's good to be around family and that sort of thing for a while. And one of the changes that's been happening within Brewcold at the moment is I'm not spending that much time in a brewery at the moment, and not making beer makes Hendo very sad. So it's good to be working with you guys. It sort of gets me back on the floor. I've got my boots on and
Sitting in an air-conditioned office drinking beer.
at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Pink beer.
So yeah, it's good.
Cool. So I guess the topic of this was how to make beer well, which is I guess what you're working on. This idea.
Yeah, look, it really leads on from your book that you released last year, and how Dan, you and I sort of worked on writing that, and you approached me and said, "Hey, can you write the foreword for it?" And I said, "Yep, absolutely. That sounds like a great idea." And a lot of what I wrote in the foreword might have been a bit of a forward, pardon the pun, forward thinking kind of thing of where the next chapter of the Black Ops journey. The long and the short of what I'd written there was great. You've got a brewery, it's up and running, you're making beer. Now it's time to make beer well, and that's not to say that that the beer that comes out of Black Hops is bad, but the way in which I look at the beer and the brewing industry and that sort of thing is we have to strive for an ever increasing level standard of quality, and it's a process of continuous improvement. So Govs done a great job getting the brewery up and running, and I reckon I would agree with him. Seeing what I've seen over the last couple of weeks, and especially yesterday, and just watching Govs work on the floor, as he's getting pretty busy. He needs some help, and sort of you and we're all going to work together over the next couple of months, and we're going to strive to improve, because that's just what you do. You just make better beer. It's good for everybody, really. It's good for the business, good for the punters.
And are you ready to talk about what your services?
Yeah. So while Brewcolt's not making too much beer, and it doesn't really require me, I've started a new business. It's called Rockstar Brewer, and it's I suppose it's a little bit of a consultancy or advisory business for craft brewers to. There's plenty of brewing consultants out there that'll go and sell you a brewery and sell you equipment, help you build a brewery. But I don't think there's too much here in Australia in the way of, once you're up and running, helping you to make the best beer that you can. And so, over the last few years, I've had lots of chats with lots of brewers who are now up and running, you guys included, and. So what I'm doing now is putting something back into the industry, taking my experience. I've worked in literally dozens of different breweries over the years, and that there's a lot of knowledge that's sort of built up, and a lot of it's in my head. And what this is about is getting that knowledge out of my head and sharing it. And for breweries that are out there who want to improve the standard of the beer that they're making, give me a call, or go to rockstarbrewer.com and just chuck your email address on there for now, and we'll send you some more information when it's up and running.
Sweet. So your idea was you're launching this thing anyway. You may as well do a case study with us.
Absolutely.
And you'll build the what's it going to look like? Is it going to be procedures, or is it going to be training? Or?
It's a little bit of training. There's a little bit of technology behind it. I don't know if it would actually turn into a software application, but I've got this pretty fancy Google spreadsheet which captures a lot of data, and it can pretty much plug into any brewery, and it's good for a brewer to be able to collect information, so they build up a lot of knowledge about what they're doing, because you can make if you make a bad batch of beer, for example, and you go, geez, that wasn't so great, let's not do that again. Or on the flip side, if you make a really awesome batch of beer and you go, that was phenomenal, we need to be doing that all the time, how did you do it? And so, in terms of the repeatability and learning from your mistakes, you need to build up a massive set of data, and to give your brewery the intelligence that it needs to be able to make good decisions and improve the product that comes out. So there's a little bit of that, a little bit of advisory, just straight up consulting. There's a little bit of training in there, and then there's a little bit of IP around things like standard operating procedures and stuff like that. So I'm just going to see where it goes. I'm pretty sort of open-minded, and that's why having you guys on as a case study brewery is going to really. I mean, most of it comes from what's happening on the floor with Govsy, so it's sort of, Govs has got probably going to have some needs about things that he wants to achieve, and it'll probably steer in that direction, So, not here to tell Govsy what to do. It's his house, and I'm very respectful of that.
Don't be stupid. That's exactly what's going to happen, and that's what we want.
Govsy, do that.
It's about getting over your ego and realising that the goal here is to make better beer and run a better brewery. And everyone wins if we just
Absolutely.
apply it.
I think now in 2017 we're going to see some pretty significant change in the craft beer industry here in Australia. And I think it's kind of going to be very reminiscent of what happened in the US in the late 90s. So for those that don't know, there was the first craft beer boom in the United States and in around the late 90s before the dot-com bust. Right before that was a pretty decent shakeout of breweries in the US, and a lot of breweries went bust, shut up shop and that sort of thing. And I think, if I recall correctly, it was Greg Cook from Stone Brewing who said the shakeout wasn't based on price. It was based the brewers it was a shakeout based on quality. Those brewers who weren't making good beer were the ones that didn't survive.
Yeah, it's like most industries. Like, you don't have to be a qualified brewer to open a brewery.
No.
And unfortunately, a lot of people are getting into that space because it's attractive and they're good home brewers, and it's a lot more than that. And I think this program is going to really make people realise that quality is important, and it's going to be the people that apply it that will stay around and survive this shake-up that's on its way.
You probably speak to a lot of home brewers out there who are thinking about going pro, and I speak to lots of people that say to me, "Oh, Hendo, I want to do what you've done," and I'm like, well, okay, probably the first thing you need to do is get a formal education in brewing, and then and secondly, probably go and work in someone else's brewery for a while. And there seems to be at the moment a lot of home brewers coming out of the woodwork, so to speak, and they're launching in and starting their own brands.
And Gypsy Brewing Avenue.
That's right. And I'm not for a second trying to discourage people from going down that path. I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with it. But what I've always said, and I said in the foreword to your book, was go make your beer, bring it to the market, because there's consumers out there who want to drink your beer. Just do it well, because if you don't make your beer well, you make the rest of us look bad. And so that's really what we need to do. There's lots of people in the industry who want to help too. So, but getting a formal education is really important. Like, Govs has got a formal education. He's done IBD, I think it was. So, which level are you at with the IBD? Is
just the GCB, just entry level?
Yeah, but you know what? It's something, right? It's not. What it's not is Govs jumping on Google in the morning trying to work out how something works from a homebrew website, or working out how much yeast to pitch from Mr. Multi or something like that. There's more to it than that, So so Govs has done IBD. I've got a postgraduate degree, so I've got a graduate certificate in brewing from University of Ballarat, which is now known as Federation University in Victoria. And there's lots of paths you can take to get a formal education. You can do University of Ballarat, there's IBD, there's Siebel Institute in the US. There is, thanks to Neil Cameron from Institute of Beer in Sydney. Also, I think Richard Adamson from Young Henrys is also involved. They're actually writing Certificate 3 for TAFE in Ultimo TAFE in Sydney. So there's actually going to be some vocational training for brewers starting in a few weeks' time.
That's good.
And so that course is fully subscribed now, I'm led to believe. But that's really awesome.
Well, that's fantastic, because brewing is one of those crafts where you do need to study, but you also need to be doing it. It's like reading how to become a plumber and not actually have ever changed a tap before.
That's right.
Like, applying the skills physically is also quite a big challenge. So having someone who's willing to teach you the practical side and allowing you the space to learn.
And I think it's important to distinguish between the skill of making beer and the skill of making beer at a commercial scale, because they're obviously two very different things.
100%. Yeah.
Totally.
And it's not about discouraging people. It's about educating people and giving people who want to pursue this path the right tools to succeed and not jump in and fail.
Exactly. We're still in the situation here in Australia where the craft beer industry is still growing. Beer consumption is still declining, which I think is really weird, but craft beer consumption is going up. So we're sort of really bucking the trend here. But, you know, the funny thing is that consumers are very savvy, even though they may not be able to articulate what beer quality is. They know a good beer when they drink it, and they know a bad beer when they drink it. I can't say why. I can't necessarily say
Do you think
why.
that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. Give you an example. What were you drinking before you started drinking craft beer? What beer were you drinking?
Little Creatures, probably.
But before that, even.
Oh, God, before that. I don't know.
Goldies.
Yeah, Powers cans.
Powers cans. What is it, 1993? So everyone has their craft beer epiphany, right?
Yeah.
And before they were drinking craft beer, they were drinking some mainstream beer. Let's just call it Forex Gold, for example, right?
Drunk plenty of that.
Right, everyone's drunk plenty of Forex Gold, right? It's all my dad drinks. You know, that's just how it is. Now, I'll make a statement here. Forex Gold is a very high quality beer, and there's a lot of people out there who are probably listening right now who'll go, "No, it's not. It's shit." And am I allowed to say shit?
Oh, fuck.
Oh, fuck
Okay.
yeah.
Good. So they go, "No, it's a shit beer," and so how? I think it's a very high quality beer. Carlton Draft is a very high quality beer.
It's exactly the same every time you
VB
get it.
is exactly. It never has any variation. It has extremely long shelf life. You can drink a 2-year-old, Forex Gold, and it tastes almost as good as the day it went into the can or the bottle. It's very well made. It's backed up by very highly paid people who work in labs and sensory evaluation, a studio or something like that. And it's always consistent, and it's measured, and it's very factory made, and you don't have to it lacks the value. So I kind of class beer in two ways. There's quality and there's value. And so you can have a beer that's very high quality but very low value, and that would be your Forex Gold, right? It's extremely well-made beer, but I don't think too much of that beer or that style and that sort of thing. And then you can have it on the flip side where you've got high value, low quality, which is, I recall a brewery from around 2010 who made this groundbreaking beer. It was like a 10% smoked imperial bird horsehair stout or something like that, right? But one bottle was flat, the next bottle was a gusher, next one was okay, and it all come out of the same tank. So that's like low quality, high value. But people were raving about this beer and how groundbreaking it was, and it was true. And so I think as a modern craft brewer in 2017, we need to strive for both high value and high quality. That doesn't mean that all brewers should be making, barrel-aged burnt horsehair triple IPAs, but what each brewery chooses to make, which captures their particular audience, you need to be doing a beer that they value and then do it well.
Do you think there's a compromise? Like I noticed, maybe it's just anecdotally, but I noticed like as the breweries get bigger and bigger and bigger, the beer seems to get less. I don't know if less good is the right word, but it doesn't seem to taste the same anymore. Without naming names, is that a factor of the size, or do you think it's? Is there something else going on?
How do you mean it doesn't taste the same anymore? Describe that to me.
I just think it starts to taste more like the mainstream beer starts to taste.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably for a number of reasons. It's like approachability, but it's also cost of manufacturing.
Yeah.
At a larger scale, if you can shave 10% of your hops out of a beer and it's still acceptable, then that's a huge saving to a large brewery. Whereas smaller guys, we'll dump 50 kilos into a batch and not give a fuck how much it costs. So it's probably works on a number of levels.
Maybe your taste changed.
I think that
as
that
well.
probably has
That's
a lot to
part
do
of
with
it.
it.
I always make sure that in my personal consumption of beer, that I drink lots of new beers that I haven't tried before, and try consistently have a consistent range of beers that are just go-tos that I drink plenty of as well. and that are pretty accessible. And I kind of love how you can walk into a lot of bars pretty much anywhere in the country now. Around any major urban area, and there's always something that and it might be a Little Creatures, pale ale, or it might be a Stonewood Pacific ale, but their beer, the beers from those breweries come from operations that are so big that they have the financial means to be able to invest in quality management that's not too dissimilar to your Forexes and your CUBs and that sort of thing. So
yeah. Alrighty. Well, questions?
Let's do some questions.
I can't call it fan questions. That sounds like a one. Audience questions. Hendo fan questions. Well, I did have one saying, why'd you move to Queensland, which you kind of answered.
Yeah, it's just... really, it's just about...
he wants to look like Kelly Slater.
I'll tell you what.
Stay here for a while.
Speaking of Kelly Slater, I'm going to bring in next time. I actually there's a photo of me when I was 19 years old over at Burleigh Heads there, and I was in Australia Surfing Life magazine. And because I've got my photo, and Kelly Slater's on the cover. He was a very young man back in 1993, and it was just cool as shit.
He would have had hair back then.
No.
No?
No, I don't think so. I think he shaved it. Well, he wouldn't have been much left. I don't know. I have to dig it out. I have to get the
He had a good head of hair. He was on Baywatch. And
yeah, he's Baywatch.
That's right. Anyway, answer the question. Look, Brew Cult's still a thing, and if you're listening and you're in Melbourne, head up to Brew Cult Bar, 581 Sydney Road in Brunswick. The bar's chugging along very well, and Matt and the crew are there and ready to serve all of your beery and foodie needs. It's a amazing space, and I'm very proud of it. This is really just a bit of a personal thing, It's more about me getting more in touch with actually making beer. I think, as I said before, I found that I was being dragged too far away from any brewery, and I've got a lot of respect for people who work in hospitality. It's a really tough gig. It's just not my cup of tea.
Mm. Sounds good. Plus the Gold Coast is an epic
place absolutely.
Be this time of year. I'm answering your question for you. All right. Callum 50 Cal Hannay. Cool name.
Yeah.
Good name for a beer. Biggest changes in the beer industry last 5 years.
In the last 5 years?
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
It's a good question. I mean, the obvious first one is that it's now a big industry. Like 5 years ago, it was kind of really niche and small, and now it's a bit more mainstream, and it's not weird to walk into your local pub and see 2 or 3 craft beers on tap. So I think there's a market change happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jamie Cox he's now from Hack Brewing in Victoria, formerly of Coinda, and we were sort of chatting yesterday about how 5 years ago it used to be much more of a kind of a backyard operation was kind of the way we were describing it, but I'm not sure if that's the correct word, and how it was very much around a lot of mateship and all that sort of stuff, and now everybody who's in the industry is becoming much more professional. I think that's good for the industry because it means that you're going to see better beer out of it. I think from the perspective of someone who's in the industry, I actually think that's despite that being a good change that's happened over the last 5 years, I think we still need to focus on some fun. And we can lose touch with that so quickly, when you get wrapped up in the business. And so, that's I
think I read, is it 50 breweries a year that's happening in Australia?
I think we're over 400 now in Australia. I think according to craft breweries, they reckon it's over 400 breweries and brewing companies.
So if it's 50 a year, 5 years ago, I wonder how many there were. Probably bugger all.
You'd be less than 100, I would say. If I sort of cast my mind back to sort of 2010 when I was working out at Prickly Moses out in the Otways. There wasn't that many at all, you know.
There wouldn't have been any. Burley would have.
5 years ago, I was
Burley
at Burley Brewing, and
and
I used to tell people, like people say, "Where do you work?" I say, "I work at Burley Brewing," and on the Gold Coast, people are like, "Oh, there's a brewery on the Gold Coast." And now, like, you know, people know Burley, people know Bolter, people know us. They're just common places where people go to. Back then, it was just kind of hidden, I guess.
Yeah,
waiting to blossom.
Yeah, we've blossomed. We've matured.
It's also
I think
like
particularly up here as well. Queensland was probably even a little bit further behind.
Oh, massively.
Oh, and a lot of that's got to do with probably a lot to do with liquor licensing reform. I think Brennan. I think it was Brennan from Burley was talking about what he did when he went to apply for his liquor license, and he approached the liquor licensing department and said, "I'd like to apply for a license to build a brewery," and they handed him the form to close a brewery because that's all they had. Because all the breweries are all closing, and so there's no, I want to open a brewery. Oh, you know, so it's changed up here, and I think a lot of the things that have changed over the years have really revolved around the individual state-based liquor licensing.
Yeah.
You know, WA and Victoria are probably the two states that have the most breweries in them. I'm talking 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was revolving around, it's pretty easy to get a liquor licence in Victoria. It's bloody difficult to get a liquor licence in Western Australia, but there was a lot of people with a lot of money who would apply and could afford to go through that process. And as you've seen liquor licence reform sweep across the country, where state governments had started to view breweries not as big monoliths like CUB and Lion Nathan, but as niche industries, tourist attractions that create jobs and local employment. You've seen the breweries, the liquor licensing for breweries become aligned with wineries.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the other thing I think I've noticed change. Like when I first remember hearing of Burley, it was like seeing their packaged bottles in bottle shops ages and ages before I ever like experienced the actual brewery. Whereas like breweries like ours, most of the people who've had Black Ops have probably either had it here or they've had it within 5 kilometres of here at a bar that's been brewed a couple of weeks before. Like that, at least in Queensland, didn't really exist 5 years ago. Maybe it did in Melbourne, where most people who are drinking the beer are actually rocking up to the venue or having it close proximity to the venue.
Yep, absolutely. And you know what? That's really the future of craft beer industry. I think when I started Brewcult back in 2013, it was not difficult given the sorts of beers that I started out with, things like Acid Freaks and the Psychedelic series and that sort of thing. It was very easy. There was enough people spread thinly across the country that I could get almost national distribution out of it. I don't think that's repeatable now. I think if you go and open a brewery, it's about being the term that often gets used is hyper local. You've got to be hyper local. It's best for your product. It's best for your consumers, and I think that's really the current trend in what's happening with craft beer here in Australia.
Cool. Thanks for the question, 50 Cal.
Thank you, 50 Cal.
You know, it's 50 Cal from now on. Same from 50 Cal, favourite style to brew and drink. Probably everyone can answer this one. You can go first, guys. Favourite style to brew and drink.
Oh, it's one of those questions I get asked a lot, and I hate answering it. Because I feel bad talking about beers in front of other beers. So we're drinking...
it's your own beer, Govs.
We're drinking Pink Mist at the moment, and I'm going to say it, but Code Red is definitely my favourite beer of ours to brew and to drink. Red IPAs is it just makes me happy. I can't explain why. I
love Red IPA.
Love brewing them. Love smelling them. Love watching them ferment. It's pretty sensual. That's enough from me.
I'm just gonna go. That's great, Govsy.
You'll go, Hendo.
I too like Red IPA. However, I like doing. Look, I've made and I still love to make IPA and variants of it. And what I love about brewing IPA is there's a hell of a lot of IPA out on the market at the moment, and there's no brewery in Australia that doesn't do at least one. And there's a very small but vocal minority of beer snobs out there, and I'll use beer snob instead of beer geek as the terminology, who get really bored by IPAs. Go, oh, not another IPA. Oh, it's a triple IPA, boring. But I think IPA's a playground and not a prison. There's so much you can do with it, and it still excites me. Hops still excite me, after all these years. And and your sort of case in point is what I did with the psychedelic series of beers, with Brewcult, because they're all IPA. There's 6 of them, but they're almost identical, right? They all have the same starting gravity. They're all hopped at the same rate. One of them has a different yeast strain than all the others. One of them has a little bit of wheat in there. One of them has a little bit of crystal malt to turn it red. And even though they're so almost identical, and the process that they go through to brew them and ferment them is almost identical, these little variants have created 6 very, very different beers. And I love that, and I love those little nuances in how you can just change one thing, literally one thing, and you've got a completely different beer. That's cool. So I'm going to vote for IPA.
Eddie?
So this would be me. What's my favourite to drink, I guess? Because I don't brew. Anything red. That, just like Govsy and probably Hendo by the sound of his response. Yeah, I like pink. But I especially like ambers and red IPAs. I feel like sort of the best of both worlds. And I always think in anything that tries to do 2 things really well, normally fail at both. Like if anything's called a hybrid, they're normally terrible at both things. But the red IPA or red beers, they pick up the roastiness and chocolatey that you get from a stout, but then the malt that you'd get from other styles of beers. I think the red just really does everything I want in a beer really well. As far as beers, I like to sit and enjoy and consume probably Belgian triples.
Oh shit!
Yeah, Belgians.
Good answer. Code Red's coming back next week too, for anyone listening.
It wasn't a direct plug.
Can you tell? All right, I'm skipping it because I've never brewed anything in my life, so I'm skipping that question. All right, AIRA Accounting Insti. Are you using we're kind of talking about this a bit before. Are you using an app stack, i.e. a series of connected cloud apps to run the finance and operations of your brewery? If so, are there any apps which look promising or just didn't work out for your brewing business? Any now you can't live without? So this is a pretty big question because we use lots and lots of different apps to do with lots of different parts of what we do. For the actual brewery, you can probably answer it. For other stuff, I can probably answer it.
To answer it shortly, no, we don't have anything that's just connected and works perfectly.
That's all we've got, Hendo.
Yeah, that's part of Rockstar Brewing 101. We did dabble a bit with Ecos Brewmaster, which was intended to be an all-in program that would link with production and sales and distribution.
What happened there?
It doesn't link with Zero.
It's only mild, isn't it?
And it was clunky.
And
it was clunky as fuck. It did record a lot of valuable information, but from a user point of view, it became a pain to use, and that's like just a telltale sign that you shouldn't use it.
If it's inhibiting the work that you're trying to do.
Yeah, you want to kind of have something there that's not a burden on the task, and it was a burden for everyone from doing invoicing to recording mash temperatures. So like we abandoned it. We've gone back to like some very primitive processes now, looking for the answer.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's interesting you actually raised the Ecos Brewmaster thing. I've seen it. I've had a bit of a play with it. I do know of a couple of breweries that are using it. And, I won't comment on ECOS itself, but what I will say is that capturing data as part of any manufacturing business is super important. You've really got to, as part of any sort of basic quality, quality assurance and quality control, you need to know that you're making your beer within your specification. You've got to know you're hitting your targets and stuff like that. So there are a few other apps out there that I've heard of. Some of them are SAP based, which means they're really expensive.
I sort of cringe every time we see something.
There's things like, there's SAP systems like things like orchestrated beer and stuff like that. They're very popular in the States, but
super expensive.
And no Australian brewer, can afford to use them. So I think the question that sort of needs to be answered is, what's the minimum the information you need to capture?
Yeah, there's a massive gap in the market for that product. If someone's willing to just produce it, is just.
Do you need something that just looks after the manufacturing of beer thing? And did you really need something that linked across to your sales and marketing and inventory?
That's the question. We were looking for inventory and looking for integration to Xero.
I use an inventory system, so I use Deer Systems as my inventory management system. It's excellent. It was easy to set up. I never took it. I only use it for inventory of finished product, so I never took it as far as doing kitting and assemblies and stuff like that. But it was ready to go. I certainly could do that if I put the effort into it. But what it didn't do, for example, is it didn't actually, because it was a generic inventory system, it didn't actually track the steps around manufacturing beer. It was just a general inventory product. Cost control, unfinished goods, finished goods, shifting things between warehouses. It does my invoicing, so every time I raise an invoice, it syncs it across to Xero. I can keep my sales reps up to date with stock that's in the warehouse, so they know what's for sale, but not in real time. So I have to email a PDF to them once a week. It's good enough, Doesn't have very good mobile integration.
A lot of these software, they're just kind of they've written so long ago that they're not suitable for how people work these days.
Yeah, like since we abandoned using ECOS, I started working with a mate of mine who's somewhat of a developer, and we just created some intelligent Excel worksheets that would capture the information that we needed, and then try to make that integrate with these other spreadsheets and slowly piece together what would be just a fundamental rudimentary program that would capture the basic information that we need.
It's
working, absolutely. So the first one we did was,
because I've done something similar,
was a spreadsheet that did all our excise reporting at the end of the month. So that was a process that would take me all day long, doing it by manually. And when I told my mate, he's like, "You're fucking nuts! Like, I can put something together this afternoon that'll do it in 2 seconds." And we did. And I'm like, what else can you do? So we've been working together for the past couple of months on a few different projects, but none of them are really 100% complete yet.
Right. Okay. It's interesting.
And then they're not something that could be easily productized either. They're just...
It works for you.
It works for us.
Yeah. That's probably the issue, is every brewery is so different. It's hard for someone to come out with something that's going to suit everyone.
Every brewery is different, but I'm not convinced that each brewery is so radically different that you can't. I agree with you. You can't have. There's no one size fits all model, but certainly if you take an 80-20 approach, there's got to be something there, and there hasn't been something done yet that suits Australian and or Kiwi brewers and the systems of taxation that we work under and that sort of thing, where something actually just fits. Doesn't really exist yet, And if you look at the stuff like ECOS or orchestrated beer and that sort of thing, they're very geared towards the American market and TTB reporting and all that sort of stuff that really doesn't mean anything to an Australian brewer, and probably is far too complex and far too scaled for business that's way bigger than what any Australian brewer is currently.
Good opportunity, maybe.
Definitely.
I haven't written code in a long time.
Last question from Adam Sewell. Next big trend in craft beer you see coming?
Oh, it's definitely sours. Oh, God, that was really lame.
That was last year, wasn't it?
That was last year, was Sour. Sour's the new IPA. I think heading into 2017, we have a audience which are very savvy, which continue to be very savvy. There's a lot of new people drinking beer, drinking craft beer. Probably, it's got to be choice. Choice is the new trend. It's like there's just so many new breweries starting up, and there's so many interpretations of existing styles of beer that are being done, and there's a lot of new brands starting up. I know that sounds really like flowery and shit, but that's what it is,
Yeah, I think it's not really like so much what's the next big style that's going to hit the market. I think it's this level of engagement that's growing within the industry where people are going to their local brewery, whereas before they would just go to the bottle shop. Like it's going to these events, it's meeting the people behind it and developing those relationships with the community. I think is going to be the biggest trend.
I never answer questions like that.
I think to tie in with both those answers, I think fresh beer. Like in the last 7 months that I've been a brewery owner, I haven't drunk anything but fresh beer, and I feel really spoilt, and I want everyone else to be spoilt because it's incredibly different, and you can't explain it. You just have to drink fresh beer to know what I'm talking about.
I was going to mention that because our latest post is about that, about all the things. Like I've sort of been a few steps behind Eddie in our craft beer process over the years, and he I was drinking Little Creatures, and then he moves on to this, and then he moves on to that, and then he learns about the dates on bottles, and I'm kind of a few steps behind. But writing about that yesterday on the blog was cool because it's like a process where craft beer people know how to get fresh beer, but the rest probably don't. They probably don't understand, how long beer can sit in a bottle shop, or how quickly beer can go bad when it sits out. Sits outside. So that process of education, or how hard it is for beer to travel a long way.
That's my that's always been my my mantra is fresh beer for as many people as possible, and that all started for me when I was for 5 years ago now, 6 years ago now, and I was standing in a well-known Melbourne venue, and there was a tap takeover event from a particular country, which I won't because it'll identify the venue and where the beer came from and that sort of thing.
Go on, we like exclusives.
Drop it like it's hot.
So it was sort of like this tap takeover from a certain country, and there was like mega well-known, super cool brewery X and super cool international brand Y, and I was standing at the bar, and I point to the IPA. I'll have that IPA from that super cool brewery, please. And I drank it, and it was old and stale and oxidized hops and stuff like that. And I was like, that's disappointing. I know it didn't come out of the brewery that way. And then I went, okay, well, it's probably just next one. I'll try the next one, and try the next one, and it was another hoppy beer, and it was the same thing again. It was old and tired, and I'm like, that's really disappointing. And then I looked around the room, and I saw sort of groups of people huddled around and smelling and tasting all of these stale IPAs, and they're going, wow, this is amazing. And I'm just like, it just suddenly dawned on me, that old and tired hoppy beer smell and flavour. That's what these people thought hops tasted like and smelled like. And I was just like, that's really sad. So, I went out to sort of try and change that. And, one of the things that we did at Brewcult was whenever we did a new beer release, and especially if it was a hoppy beer, we'd get it out across the country, and we'd get it simultaneously released all over the country. And that was pretty rad. And everyone got to try really super fresh hoppy beer. And
people are then educated in, particularly with your brewery, when they're coming out. They know when it's coming out.
Yeah, that's right.
So I remember that happening as well. Like when your beer come out, you'd be getting, I'd know which one would be fresh.
Yeah, I could, thanks to Dan Rickard from Calibre Beer up here in Queensland, I ship beer out of the brewery the day it literally goes off the bottling line or the kegging line onto a pallet, straight on a truck that day. It takes about, excuse me, that was the raspberry burp there. Then straight up here, be 3 or 4 days on a truck up here. Trucks can't go any faster than that, just saying.
Yeah.
And then he'd get it and he'd have it out the next day. So literally within the week, we'd have beer out here and in people's hands and bellies and brains. It was great. So, and it just doesn't get any fresher than that. And nothing wrong with week-old beer.
Yeah.
I actually had that conversation with someone the other day, and it was they kind of raised a point that no one had ever brought to my attention. Not that I agreed with it, I just actually never heard it before. We were talking about, these big popular American IPAs and how they're coming over here, and maybe they're not getting here as quickly as we think they are, and maybe they're sitting in a hot warehouse trying to get cleared through customs. And the point that they raised was, well, that's what IPAs were all about, was to travel long distances, and that's why they hire alcohol and hire hops, and it gives them a bit more longevity. And it kind of just stopped me in my tracks for only a second. I'm like, okay, I can see the sentiment that you're trying to make, and the relevance to maybe the history of the style, but at the end of the day, it tastes like shit.
It doesn't taste anywhere near as good as it would.
No,
if you put it on that side.
The guys that were drinking on the boat the next day, they were having a fantastic time. At the end of the trip, maybe they'd stopped drinking, and that's why it actually survived the trip.
They also never used to ferment beer with fridges, so I think we learned.
That was never good.
I mean, that might have been a valid premise, maybe in 1836 or something
Yeah,
like
I just
that,
never
but
heard that
modern
point raised. I thought it was
IPA
really interesting.
is different now, and times have changed, and beer storage has changed, and consumer tastes have changed. So
100%.
Valid point. But
I thought it was I'm like, that's interesting. I've
Yeah.
never heard that one.
I think it'd be cool for us to do something here where we do like a tasting. I mentioned to you the other day. Do like a tasting and bring in, because we store older beer just to see how bad it goes over time.
Yeah, we
And
store
bring
our
it in.
own beer in the most horrible conditions known to man, and we do that with the purpose of seeing what our beers can handle. And we're very aware that these temperatures and time they certainly don't love it.
Like it.
And but you put the same beer in good conditions for only a couple of months, and it's fresh and it's fantastic.
I think it'd be cool to do an event where people come in and we show them a bunch of these beers and explain the taste, just an educational thing, because I think
that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Good excuse to drink some beer.
good excuse to drink some beer. But also, I think we're pretty in the industry. I think there's more, like a lot more education to be done in terms of, like, I think a lot of the flavors people pick up on, like you say, they're used to it. They might actually like it, but it's not actually how it's supposed to be.
There's also a lot of perception from the consumer that beer is a non-perishable product. So when you come from drinking Forex Gold and Carlton Draft that have amazing shelf lives that can last literally years, when you come from that space, you go, oh, it's beer, it's alcoholic, so it's not perishable. But that's not the case with a lot of craft beer that's unpasteurized and unfiltered and lots of things like that. So that's where I think a lot of the consumer education needs to happen as well.
But yeah, I agree. I also think the vast majority of people are buying their beer from bottle shops, from breweries from a long way away. They've probably been sitting in the bottle shop for a long time, and they're getting used to that flavour as well. And I think even just pointing that out can be really eye-opening.
Absolutely.
All right, you coming to that event?
Yeah, when are we doing it?
All right,
I'd love
Govs
to
and
be
Hendo
involved,
are
mate.
running it. I'll just come as a spectator. Yeah, we should do that soon.
Govsy, come and watch Govsy and Hendo drink beer.
$50.
We'll sell tickets to it, don't worry. All right, cool. That's been really good. Awesome to catch
So
up.
what are we going to do over the next few weeks here in Series 2? What's the plan?
Well, the thing we haven't mentioned yet is this idea of the AIBAs and getting to a point where our beers are I guess we're improving processes. We're probably making some changes.
Yeah, so
we're going to be submitting beers to those awards, and that's a couple of months away, so we're working towards that.
So
it gives us some really good goals because, obviously we're looking to improve our processes, improve our quality, become better brewers, make better beer. The best validation for that is the biggest awards in the country. So let's try
for
for
those
that.
who don't know what the AIBAs are, that stands for the Australian International Beer Awards. So that's run by the Royal Agricultural Society of Victoria. And that's run once a year. They judge it right before Good Beer Week, so it's mid-May now. And they get about 80 to 100 world-class brewers and industry people from around the world come and judge. I'm a huge fan, and full disclosure, I am an AIBA judge. And I think it's a great way. I'm a huge fan of it. It's a great way to for any brewery to submit their beers and have a professional, objective, and impartial opinion of their beer from an industry peer. And what it does is it helps brewers improve their process, get some feedback, and put, hopefully win some silverware. So I think what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is not only looking at our process, here and making improvements. We're going to entries open next week. I think they open on the 5th of February. So we've got to get our skates on. It's okay. You've got like a month to enter. So entering and submitting your exhibits is not at the same time. So the entries open at the start of February. They close at, I think it's around the 1st of March or something like that, around the start of March. But you don't have to have your exhibits in until around the end of April. I'm not sure of dates yet. We'll find out. We'll be able to let you know next episode. But the idea is it's one thing to enter, but Black Hops has got a great range of beers, and what class do we enter these beers into? It's a very common mistake for brewers to enter their beers into competition and send them into a class that the description of, you've got to take the label away, and it might say American Pale Ale on the label, but is that beer, according to a style guideline, actually an American Pale Ale? I think we'll probably talk about that in a future episode about about the judging process and how that works. It's pretty cool how it all works. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to enter some beers in the RBAs.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting.
We're going to see how we go, and we're going to make some improvements to our process and our systems here, and let's let our industry peers decide how we're doing.
Sounds good.
I think it's kind of cool.
With a bit of luck, we'll do the final episode from the awards night.
From the stage.
We're going to be wrecked.
All right, on that note. That'll do.
I think we'll wrap it up.
All right, so if you want to learn more about what we're doing, blackops.com.au/blog, there's the couple of articles we've mentioned about the beer freshness, and some other recent ones up there you'll probably like, and Hendo.
Yeah, if you go to rockstarbrewer.com, at the moment it's just a really basic page. Give me your email address, and in 7 days' time, I will give you an ebook which has the full recipe to Thanks Captain Obvious IPA.
Fantastic.
That's out of close.
There's a link to that
there
on our Facebook Live video.
Solid. All right, thanks,
Awesome.
guys. Thanks, Hendo, and
Cheers.
thanks for listening.
Have a good day.
Cheers.